Stop disrupting and distracting my counselor. Yeah, okay. I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. I want to start by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, your worship, with the exceptions of councilors Butler, Luberts, and Zanko.
Okay, just a few brief announcements. Saturday, this past Saturday was the Town of Fort Erie's tree giveaway, another very successful event. There were 1,000 trees that the town gave away this year. The good news is they weren't all given away, so there'll be an opportunity to do this again in the fall. But there were a significant number that were given away. I'm guessing there's maybe a couple hundred left. There were some trees given to individuals who tried to get trees last year and we'd run out, so they were given first crack on Friday. And then on Saturday, cars were lined up at 5:45 in the morning to get trees for an event that started at 8:30. So it was very successful. A lot of volunteers were out from various organizations. I know that Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, the Garden Club was out, Communities in Bloom. COPE was there to receive donations, and there were some other volunteers as well. So thank you to everyone who participated, including the town staff. Very, very informative. Just wanted to update the community with respect to the YMCA, which is a very important topic here. The task force that the town has set up had its first meeting last Monday. Councillor Duvenel and Councillor Zanko were on that committee. We identified a number of important facets of this issue going forward. And I had an opportunity on Friday to meet with, this past Friday, to meet with Dr. Ian Brown, the chair of the Niagara Y board, and Jennifer Dockstader. And we'll be continuing that dialogue and continuing other meetings and opportunities. The next task force meeting will take place after the Y has completed its local community consultations, which are scheduled to take place this week and I believe the first part of next week. So we'll have further to report at that time. This Friday coming up, May the 8th, is McHappy Day. So for all of you who like fast foods, it's Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday, May the 8th. And that's all day, and the proceeds go to Ronald McDonald House. And then finally, on Friday, is the grand opening of Envoy Energy's compressed natural gas facility on Bowen Road. For people who are wondering what's being constructed there, it's a compressed natural gas facility that will allow vehicles that have been retrofitted to operate on natural gas. So that's a pretty exciting opportunity. It's one of the few facilities in all of Canada. So that's Friday morning that grand opening takes place. There is one addendum this evening. Linda Reed is delegation with respect to a purchase of property on Gloria Road. So she'll be dealt with under the Planning and Development Services portion of our meeting. We've got some upcoming meetings with respect to property rezonings, all of which will take place here in the council chamber, and all of which are scheduled to start at 6 o'clock, although they'll obviously take place as they are called and dealt with on our agenda. The first has to do with Integra Inc., 63 Belfast Road South. That's Monday, May the 13th, and the information report for that will be available May the 8th, 2019. Second is with respect to Ashton Homes Western Limited, and that relates to a block in the Peacebridge Village subdivision on the north side of Louisa Street. Again, May the 13th, and the information report will be available May the 8th. There's a property rezoning for Dave Cook relative to 1931 Norris Avenue on May the 13th. An information report will be available again on May the 8th, 2019. And finally, there's a public meeting relative to the Glennie Drain Engineers Report, which will take place here in the council chambers on May the 13th. And the report for that will be available Wednesday, May the 8th as well. That takes us then to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, could I have a mover for those items? Councillor Dubenot? Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's good to know that there's somebody paying attention behind me. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest before we deal with the items? There being none, we'll continue on then. So Councillor Dubenot has, thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor Dubenot has moved the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments with respect to any of the reports that are contained in that consent agenda? Not that I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations in the reports? Voted early, some of you voted late. But you all voted in the affirmative. Okay, that takes us then to Planning and Development Services. And in the absence of Councillor Butler, I'm going to give the chair to you, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Planning and Development Services is now in session. There is a delegation. Gregory Bender. Manager Municipal Planning regarding industrial land supply assessment. Thank you, Mr. Bender.
It has my name on it.
Or high-tech.
Perfect. I use this too. Just yeah, does it work? It does not work. Oh, it does work. Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. It's nice to be here tonight. I'm here to present the land supply assessment. We've been retained by the town to look at 7 parcels of land, whether they be industrial or other uses. And my understanding is that I have 10 minutes to go through these slides, so I will be going through them very quickly. Obviously, you have the opportunity at the end to ask as many questions as you'd like. I will skip over the agenda and get going. So, as I mentioned, we were retained to examine 7 properties in the town, whether they've been determined to be underutilized or vacant. And they were identified in a previous study that was done in 2017 called the Industrial Land Development Strategy. The 7 sites were reviewed by looking at various background documents, local and regional planning policies, undertaking a specific land use and market analysis for each site, and also, obviously, some of the more important things, looking at the recommendations on appropriate land uses for each site. There are 7 sites here. I won't go through all of them, recognizing that the time limit that I've got, but I will go through them in a bit more detail in the upcoming slides. One of the things I wanted to identify is that there was a fairly robust engagement program that was undertaken as part of the project. We did meet with each individual landowner as part of the project, something that is relatively unique for a strategy like this. And I will say, I have never participated in a study like this where everybody was happy to see us. I was very pleased to see that, and something that I can say is quite unique about typical planning processes. So we met with them in September 2018, also had a public open house to have a more general discussion with members of the public to discuss this strategy. So all were encouraged by the work that was being undertaken. Some individuals mentioned that they were looking for opportunities to redevelop or identify a better use. We took that into consideration as part of the work that we did. And others were quite content with the existing land use that was identified on the property. Some were surprised with the existing land use, but were all, in the end, quite pleased with that. And some of the individuals mentioned that they, just to really look at the adjacent uses as part of this, to understand what perhaps what the recommendations would be looking at in terms of the adjacent land uses. In terms of a summary, some of the properties certainly have environmental constraints. Others are restricted by limited or no access to public roads or municipal servicing, and I'll go through that in a bit more detail. And where appropriate, we should be looking at alternative land uses if that was identified as part of this. Another component of the study was to undertake a detailed market analysis for each of the properties. Just to gloss over some of this, that There are fairly low industrial vacancy rates in the town compared to other gateway communities. Commercial vacancy rate has been trending higher. There's also significant, as you're well aware probably, significant residential development happening in the town. And relative to the existing land use permissions on a couple of the properties, they are quite appealing to commercial uses. So you'll see that in some of the recommendations moving forward. So 1696 Bowen Road, it's vacant. It is serviced by storm sewer, and the additional services are approximately 1.3 kilometers to the southeast, which is a significant distance when looking at the ability to develop a property. The recommendation as part of this is to maintain existing permissions. 1886 Pettit Road, again, it's vacant, significant amount of vegetation on the property. Does have access to municipal water, sewer, and storm along Bridge and Pettit Road. And we're also recommending that the existing land use permissions be retained on this as well. I'm going to go into a more concluding slide as to why this is, but just bear with me. In terms of Zero Thompson Road, it's quite an oddly shaped parcel. It is heavily constrained with environmental features, but it is one of these properties that is designated and zoned as urban entertainment center, which really provides quite a flexible mix of land uses on the property. It does have access to municipal water, sewer, and storm along Gilmore and Thompson roads, and again, we're recommending, because of the land use permissions on the property being that they're flexible, that they be retained. The properties at Gilmore Road and Dunlop Street are an interesting one because they are the rear properties of residential parcels. They are, for the most part, vacant or vegetated. They're actually designated and zoned for industrial uses, even though there's residential property or dwellings on the property for residential use. Because of their location at the back of the property, there's no particular access to municipal water and wastewater sewer services, but they do have access to storm. This recommendation is unique because we're recommending that the rear of the properties be retained as industrial, because the individuals who own these lands felt that these would be ideal for a sort of absorption into the industrial property at the rear, the industrial park at the rear. And also we're recommending that change because it also conforms to the official plan. So we're recommending that the rear parcels remain industrial, but the front of them be changed to a residential 2 zone. Again, which in the official plan they are. The front of the property, they're designated as residential. Zero Dunlop Street is another property that's quite constrained with environmental features. It does have access to municipal water and sewer across Dunlop Street, and we're also recommending these properties, because of the surrounding land uses, be retained as industrial. Zero Rural Stamford Subdivision is another property that we're suggesting be redesignated and zoned because of the development potential of this property and the uses to the north being residential. Zero Crossroads Drive is another property that we're suggesting be retained because of the flexible zoning and land use designation on the property. It does have access generally to municipal water and sewer and storm services. They are within proximity to the site. So, we've gone through a lot of properties. I know I've gone through them very quickly. One of the main things that I wanted to identify as part of the conclusion and next steps is that having these properties be retained for employment uses or industrial uses is a good thing. It allows the town to market, and we're calling them flexible lands. The main point of this is that they should not be part of your overall employment strategy moving forward with the region's MCR, or Municipal Comprehensive Review, because either they're constrained, they're sort of not in a strategic location that we would typically recommend for, employment areas. So by having them sort of be maintained for industrial uses doesn't mean that this is going to impact any processes moving forward. And this is a conversation that we did have with the region, and they seemed quite supportive of that recommendation. So some of the recommendations include implementing a couple of the parcels that should be redesignated and zoned through an implementing process to change those planning documents. Obviously, for the lands that don't have access to servicing, there's an investigation needed to determine how they could be serviced, if that's something that should be recommended. And as I mentioned, and I will reiterate, that these lands should be omitted from sort of the town's employment land supply when informing the region as part of their official plan review process. I think I did that in under 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Any questions from council? Mayor Redekop.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your presentation. I read this report with mixed feelings. On the one hand, I'm sympathetic to the notion that these lands aren't really marketable industrial lands. On the other hand, I hear what you're saying, and I've asked for clarification from the Regional Commissioner for Planning. But when you say that these lands shouldn't be part of the town's strategy for industrial purposes going forward, we're supposed to hide this from the region? How do we do that?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, the intent, Your Worship, is to not necessarily hide them, but what would typically happen, and I don't want to speak for staff as part of the process that they perhaps engaged with the region already. As part of the process, you would typically say, as part of the conversation, the region would ask what municipal land should be identified as part of the overall regional employment strategy. And my recommendation to the town is that these are not included in that. So they still may be designated employment, but in terms of a employment land that would qualify under the growth plan or the town's official plan or the region's official plan as sort of lands that should be protected for the long term, these do not fall under that.
So
Mayor?
if I can just glean then what you've said and what your report says, that's primarily because you don't see any other viable use for these particular lands other than where you've indicated some could be designated residential.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is a fair comment, that under their current land use designation or zone, they would not necessarily be appropriate as anything else, given the surrounding land use characteristics or even what the intent of the landowners would be.
Because some of these lands clearly would be very, very difficult, I think, to service. I don't see how they'd be remotely marketable. In terms of your recommendation, or in terms of the recommendation from our staff, that we approve the industrial land survey assessment final report, do you have a problem if that's qualified to indicate that these lands are not to be included in the town's industrial land strategy moving forward?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have any issue with that revision to the recommendation.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Bender.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That brings us to report number PDS 27.
We have another delegation. Addendum.
Brings us to our second delegation. 459 Gloria Road.
Good evening, everyone. I bring it to your attention that I wanted to question the appraisal price respectfully of the last lot on Gloria Road. I own three lots already. My house came with one side lot, and then there were 100 feet in the middle, and the property came with a third 50-foot lot on the other side of the 100. It was kind of a strange setup, which I didn't know I was getting into at the time. And last year, not even a year ago, I purchased the middle 100 feet so that all the lots would join, giving me a total of 250 feet. I recently purchased a private lot off of a person, an individual, for $7,500. And I'm now in the process of purchasing the final lot up the end to the end of the street from the town. And the appraisal price came in at $7,500 based on the price that I paid the private person for the lot beside it, which was a lot that I needed. My property is very flooded with water. It probably comes up to about 1 inch from the top of my rubber boots all the way around the whole house in the backyard, which I know a lot of people are having this problem this year. But, I have a sump pump, a submersible pump in the backyard that we've put 100 feet of hose out. And there's a natural pond area on the property I just purchased for $7,500. And the final lot is totally wooded. Another point I wanted to make, I bought a double lot last year off the town for $6,800, and it was totally cleared. So I just was wondering about the difference in the double lot of 100 feet by 100 feet for $6,800 that was appraised against the 50 by 100 feet, like a half a lot, for $7,500 this year, more than double what the half lot that I purchased last year would have been. Am I making sense? Yeah. So I didn't know if I could do this or not, but I submitted an offer of $4,000 back to the town. I wasn't sure if that was allowed or not, though, for the final lot of 50 by 114 feet. And so where do we go from here? I'm not sure.
I wonder if Mr. Brady can answer that.
Certainly through the chair. There is a report on tonight's agenda, PDS 28, that deals with this property. It outlines what Ms. Reed has offered, and there's a recommendation that council deny that request, but to approve the sale for $7,500. So it's up to council to decide how they'd like to move ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Ms. Reed, anything further before I ask council?
I just, do you know if anybody else had made an offer on the property that was interested in it, or does anybody? I don't think so, otherwise they wouldn't have made me the offer to buy it, right?
This is being discussed later, but I wonder if Mr. Brady can, it's in the report? Can we let the individual know?
The report's available. I think she has a copy of the report. She's the only one who's interested in the property, and town policy is to have an appraisal. An appraisal was completed for the property, and it was established at $7,500. And that's what town staff are required then to deal with. But it's up to council if you'd like to sell it for less or more. It's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Anything further from your presentation?
Yeah, just to stress that the land not even a year ago was twice the size and totally cleared, and it was sold for $6,800 as compared to the $75,000 that they're asking now. And the sale that I made from the private person was just some special circumstances for $7,500. So I think the appraisal price for this one was set off of that purchase. Yeah.
Any further questions from council? Mayor Redekop?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Reed. Did you by any chance get an appraisal yourself with respect to the value of this property?
No, I did not. No, I was kind of going off because it was less than a year ago that I got the double lot for $6,800. I was, but yeah, the $7,500 was certain circumstances. It had the pond in the middle that I was draining the water to, that I'm able to drain the water to now. Where the last lot is, it's totally covered. It's just bush. It's just, yeah, that's all. Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Reed.
Thank
for your
you.
presentation. That brings us to report number PDS 27, 2019, Industrial Land Supply Assessment, Final Report, and Next Steps. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McDermott. It's open for questions and comments. Councillor Dubineau.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just going off what had been mentioned during the presentation earlier, I'm wondering if through you to Mr. Brady, perhaps you could explain a little more how these lands would not be included as part of the comprehensive review, and how this would affect, or not affect, rather, potentials for urban boundary expansion and new industrial lands that could potentially be available in Fort Erie.
Mr. Brady?
Certainly, through you to the councillor. When it comes to the employment lands that the region considers, what they're looking at are ones that are very viable, usually have servicing, are larger in size. We've had a lot of discussion with the region back and forth on this notion of employment lands, and not only the city of, or the town of Fort Erie, but a number of the municipalities in Niagara. And the region has been very helpful in saying, you know, the small properties like we're dealing with here, they shouldn't be considered as a part of that constraint. And that discussion also occurred with our consultant as a part of this review. And I believe in my conversations with the region, that this will have no impact on whether there's a regional plan amendment to allow us to have an expansion or not. They're very small in size, and they are isolated. But a number of them, at least 3 of them, have very good opportunities in terms of employment uses. A couple of them are completely serviced. One can be serviced without too much attention to that detail. So I don't believe that they'll have any impact on that. And the standing request by the town for an employment land expansion in the Stevensville area still before the region, and we're still awaiting any conversations from them on that. Most recently, after Mr. Hayworth was here, I was directed by council to send a letter off to the region asking for further information, which I believe all of you received a copy of. And I understand that that has now been sent over to the appropriate people in their policy group, and there will be a response coming in the very near future.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Anything further, Councillor Dubino? Any further comments or questions? Mayor Redekop?
Thank you, Chair. I'm prepared to support this. I'm a little uncomfortable about having these parcels included, but I understand the rationale. And I suppose it's always possible that somebody might want any one or more of these parcels. But I'd like to move an amendment to the first resolution and add to the end where it says council approves the industrial land supply assessment final report, add the words provided the parcels identified in the report are not included in the town of Fort Erie industrial land strategy and do not prejudice the town's efforts to expand its urban boundary to designate additional lands for employment purposes.
Do I need a mover or a seconder for that?
Don't need one in committee.
Okay, that amendment is on the floor for comments or questions. Mayor Redekop?
And the reasoning is, I just want to make sure that this, I understand that there's been dialogue between our local staff and the region. I just don't want something to crop up at some point in the future where, for the purpose of convenience and perhaps mollifying the owners of these various properties, we end up in a predicament trying to expand our urban boundary to create some real industrial lands that could be developed on a larger scale. So that's really the rationale.
Any further comments or questions on the amendment? All those in favor? The amendment carries.
Is it possible?
I would have assumed that it would be going to the region in any event.
Now do we vote on the report as amended? Okay, the report as amended is now on the floor. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? The report carries as amended. That brings us to report number PDS 28, 2009, sale of marketable limited land 485 Gloria Road. Councilor Dubino, you want to move? Dubino, the report is now on the floor for comments and questions. Any comments or questions? Mayor Redekop.
Well, I think in fairness to Ms. Reed, my thinking on this is pretty clear. We have a request to acquire the land. We have a policy with respect to how we sell the land. We've obtained an appraisal, there is an appraisal. What the value of this land might have been last year, who knows? The reality is that the value of land in Fort Erie is going up. So in the absence of something to indicate that this property isn't worth $7,500, I'm not supportive of waiving our policy on this particular issue. But I think it's important for Ms. Reed to understand that we're simply trying to follow policy. And I would be interested if there was another appraisal that indicated the property wasn't worth this much, but I'm not, don't have that.
Thank you. Councillor Dubino?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to expand a little on what the mayor had just mentioned, I'm just wondering if through you to Mr. Brady, if just for my own information here, if the town has a policy, if someone was able to provide their own appraisal and if it differed relative to what ours is, if we have a policy, how we go forward from there, if Mr. Brady could fill us in.
Mr. Brady?
Through to the councillor, yes, we have a policy, and certainly the Ms. Reed could have an appraiser provide that appraisal. We would look at that, and typically, if we have two appraisals that are, of difference, we look for something in between.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, the report's on the floor. All those in favor of the report? The report carries. That brings us to report number PDS 29-2009, Memorandum of Understanding for Planning, Function, and Services between Niagara Region and local area municipalities.
I'll move that.
Moved by Mayor Redekop. The report's now on the floor for comments and questions.
Thought it was particularly riveting reading.
I'm sure you meant that in the nicest way.
I tried to keep the facts and no fiction.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report carries. That brings us to new business inquiries. Councillor Dubino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just wondering, through you to Mr. Brady, if he could perhaps fill us in. I know that in Garrison Village on houses located on Jordan Drive, I think the north side of Jasmine. There's a couple on Canada Drive and on Nancy as well. We have some properties that currently have an environmental conservation overlay applied to them. And my understanding, and I learned this during the shipping container presentation, is that anytime there's an environmental conservation overlay applied to a property, that nothing can be done to that property until the Environmental Advisory Committee has given clearance. So something as simple as someone putting up a fence, putting up a shed, things that wouldn't even necessarily require a building permit. It's my understanding that these property owners in Garrison Village would be technically in violation of town bylaw if they did that. So I'm just wondering if perhaps through you, if Mr. Brady could perhaps explain why these properties have an environmental conservation overlay, and if it's appropriate, and what our first or what our next steps would be to deal with this if it's not.
Mr. Brady?
Through you to the councillor. These properties on Jasmine Court and Jordan Drive, spelled J-O-R-D-Y-N, Jordan Drive, are part of a planned subdivision which was developed some time ago. They're zoned R2, there's houses on them, and people live there, and et cetera. The conservation overlay is a throwback to a period before that occurred. It has never been removed. The easiest way to have a decision rendered on whether this should be removed or not is for this council to send to our Environmental Advisory Committee a request to look at these lands and determine if the environmental conservation overlay should be removed. If they bring back a recommendation to that effect and council approves it, it's removed. So that's the easy way to look at it. There may be some trees out there that warrant protection, and they'll certainly bring that to our attention, and we can deal with that as appropriately.
Thank you, Councillor Dubino and Mr. Brady. Any further comments or questions under business? Okay, seeing none, any questions on the business status report? Seeing none, Planning and Development Services is.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. That takes us to Infrastructure Services, and in the absence of a committee member, I'll chair this portion of the meeting. We have one delegation with respect to the wastewater master plan, and I know that Mr. Bell is not going to be. Yes. Good evening. You know the routine. Well, you'll have a very attentive group listening to you because we're quite interested in wastewater issues, and perhaps you can just speak more quickly. Yeah. More pictures, less talk.
A lot of the content, and it'll be here available to discuss if there's any follow-up questions. And I'll try to stick to the Coles notes of the outcomes. Sorry. There we go. So essentially, I'm here today to talk about the master plan and pollution prevention control plan. And essentially, this is a study that the town would undertake every 5 to 10 years with the objective of revisiting the overall long-term plan for managing the wastewater system within the town. And as part of this ongoing process, it's to be updated as part of new policies and bylaw regulations, changes in the growth plan to address new issues and concerns that are coming up, and also to align itself with the region's overall management plan for its regional infrastructure within the town as well. And so through this process, there's quite an involved process that underwent to assess the system and to come up with the recommendations that we're here today. And the other component to talk about is that the study was done through the municipal class EA process. And so this is essentially a process that allows for a methodical review of the issues, the alternatives, and the recommendations to come up with a solution. It includes public consultation. And by doing this study through the EA process, it allows for a streamlined implementation of the recommendations. So the recommendations from this report can now go directly into implementation and do not need to re-go through the public review and evaluation process. A few key points of understanding of this study is that wastewater within the town is a shared responsibility between the town and the region. The region is responsible for treatment, pumping, and major conveyance of wastewater within the system, and the town is generally responsible for the collection of wastewater from the users and services to those regional infrastructure, and that the town is broken up into 3 key systems: Anger Avenue, Crystal Beach, and Stevensville Douglastown, and that's based off the region's treatment facilities. And the region has already undergone in 2016, 2017, a regional master plan with respect to wastewater. And so this master plan and pollution control plan builds off of that program and integrates into it. So it's using the region's plan as a base and building off of that. Another key component that was undertaken through this study was a review of levels of service for the wastewater system. So this is a measure of how do we tie investment relative to performance. And so this was a process that was undertaken with staff and key stakeholders to identify what key levels of service are we trying to achieve, what performance are we trying to achieve within the wastewater system, and then go through the process of evaluating whether we are or are not meeting those objectives, and then what alternatives or what upgrades do we need to undertake to then meet those objectives. And then further through the process, the key issues and objectives that we're trying to identify is really quantifying how are we performing today, identify what opportunities do we have to address with the current performance and deficiencies, and how do we support growth moving forward. So at the end of the day, this is a plan to look at performance and growth. And then the other key component here is this is the first time that we've also taken a look at performance. So the condition of the infrastructure and how do we maintain the condition so that that capacity remains in place to support these existing users and to support those growth projects. And so some of the key findings as going through the assessment, so once we've had the chance to define the levels of service, assess the current performance of the system, the growth impacts, and identify the issues, really the key findings of performance were that when looking at how the system should be performing in terms of typical design standards, in terms of typical flow rates, the sewers and pump stations within in the system were generally performing adequately. But the issue was due to a number of factors, condition, construction practices of the time, the amount of extraneous flow, so this would be rainwater, groundwater entering into the system, flows that typically should not be entering into the system or should be entering at lower rates, were far exceeding those typical design standards. And when we applied those actual flow rates coming into the system, there were a number of capacity issues within the system leading to undersized infrastructure, undersized pump stations, sewer overflows, and the risk of basement flooding in extreme rainfall events. And then here, essentially, it was a full assessment of the system, and the system was broken down into smaller areas to get to try to distinguish the performance within localized areas. So again, there's a lot of information on these maps, and we can go over them if you have specific questions on specific areas. So going through this process and in consultation with the town, one of the key outcomes was that if we were found a way to remove the extraneous flows, those extra flows from entering into the system, the performance of the system was generally good, and the amount of upgrades needed to address current users and growth would be minimized. So going through the process, we looked at a number of different alternatives to support long-term needs within the town. And each of these were evaluated through that EA process to come up with our preferred recommendations. And then just to briefly talk about them, the first option is the do nothing, is just maintain their existing system as is. And we can find that due to these existing deficiencies, that just wouldn't be adequate to address our growth needs. And so we looked at, one, making the pipes bigger to address the higher flows. The other one was to apply more of strategies of putting in more storage locations within the city, within the town, to capture those excess flows during extreme events to minimize the risk of flooding and overflows. And then alternative 4 was a purely let's go and find, seek, and destroy the I&I, the extraneous flow, so cut back on the amount of flows coming into the system. And then the 5th alternative was primarily addressing the removal of extraneous flows, but also recognizing that there are a number of locations that could benefit from some capacity upgrades, and that was ultimately determined to be the best solution because it addressed some of the issues that weren't being addressed by alternative 4, the I&I removal alone, and those related to a couple of growth capacity issues or undersized sewers relative to the design standards. And so the preferred servicing strategy that's the basis of the capital program is contained within the wastewater master plan pollution control plan. Is really to, step one is collect a lot more additional information on the performance and conditions of your sewers, and then to address to improve upon the existing operation and maintenance activities with the goal of better identifying where existing I&I issues exist so that we can come up with targeted programs to eliminate those sources of I&I. The second one was to implement those capacity upgrades to local sewers where there are existing capacity deficiencies. And the third recommendation was to review the I&I program as well as the capacity needs in line with your town's current state of good repair, so your sewer replacement program, and seek for opportunities to optimize those programs together with the hopes of reducing the overall budget that's presented in the program. And here again, we're just talking about the programs, and as you can see, the yellow highlights identify the few locations where there are some trunk sewer upgrades that are needed, with the remainder of the program based off of I&I removal, so extraneous flow removal. The final component to this was addressing the asbestos cement sewers that are within the town. So currently within the town, there's about 30%, 28% of the overall sewer network consists of asbestos sewers, asbestos cement sewers. And then the issue is coming up that over time and due to a number of factors, the condition and performance of these sewers is starting to deteriorate more rapidly. And so as part of this program, as part of this master plan is identifying that that a need to address these sewers and to prioritize the replacement of these sewers needs to occur, and that this can occur in conjunction with the I&I removal program. And so through this process, as we've tried to prioritize which asbestos cement sewers should be replaced first, and which ones should be replaced secondary, and is primarily targeting to first target areas with high I&I for the replacement program, and then go into the areas with moderate I&I, and then go into the areas with lower I&I, because poorly performing asbestos cement sewers can be a significant contributor to extraneous flows entering into the system. So at the end of the day, the recommendations led to this overall program. So it does seem like it's a large number, but a couple, I'll just walk through some of the details. So the first line item here is these are the capacity sewer upgrades. This is the 7.8 million. These are sewers that have been identified as being undersized to meet current or growth-related needs. So those can be accommodated within your current 10-year capital program, within your 10-year funding program. So you have your current sewer reserves are about $1.6 million over 10 years, extrapolating that out to 10 years. That's about 16 million, so that leaves us with about $8 million remaining for the rest of the work. We have $28.4 million in I&I removal works. So that's a large gambit of projects that relate to sewer replacement, sewer lateral replacement repair, and other works on private property related to reducing and eliminating extraneous flows from entering into the system. Has some details on the slide here. These projects aren't necessarily seen to be as a single cost alone, because right now the town is estimating that extraneous flows is costing the town upwards of $5 million a year in extra treatment costs, maintenance costs, lost capacity. So there is a potential for these projects to, over time, pay for themselves. The second component is that extraneous flow removal was a significant recommendation of the region's master plan, to the point where they earmarked $13.5 million specifically within the town of Fort Erie for extraneous flow removals. So there is shared funding with the region that is available to address that $28.4 million. The remaining components, the AC pipes, high and low priority, as well as the end of sewer life. So those are existing sewers that have reached the end of their expected life span and are due for replacement in the next 10 years. All those projects are related to the state of good repair. There is some opportunity to potentially align those with the $28.4 million I&I removal in those priority areas, as well as when we look at the total percentage of the system that covers, that's over 30% of the system in terms of sewers. So this is not something that's going to be happening over the next 10 years. It's going to be something that's going to happen over the next 20, 30 years to eat through that backlog. But when we look at that backlog over the long term, we do see that, and this is something that's going to be addressed in the upcoming asset management program report that's going to come to council, is that there is still a long-term funding deficit for that. And so in line with the asset management plan's recommendation, the master plan's recommending that there is a continual increase of 3% for now, to the sewer, to the sewer reserve to start addressing some of this backlog, and that the initial increases of that budget are really tied towards further investigative work. So doing CCTV inspection of the sewers and other investigations to help better understand which state of good repair AC projects should be prioritized, as well as further information to help support the I&I program. So that concludes my brief overview of the slides. So if anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. Any members of council have any questions with respect to this? I wonder if you could go back a couple of slides to the one before that.
Yes.
So when you make reference to the region identifying about $13.5 million worth of work in its master plan,
Yes.
is that money that could offset part of the $28.4 million item that you've got for infiltration and inflows?
Yes. So the $13.5 million, so those are I&I, so I forget the exact wording in the region's master plan, but those are specifically earmarked for I&I reduction within the town of Fort Erie. So those would be very much applicable to that 28.4. And though I believe the way the region is addressing that is through their CSO funding program, where they're doing cost sharing of projects with local municipalities, where I believe the range from 20 to 70% is a region cost share, depending on how effective that project is to reducing I&I.
Right. So we've been quite fortunate in getting the region to assist us with some of these CSO projects. So if we could get the region to put more money into that envelope, it would be more money available to the town of Fort Erie, perhaps. The other, you made a statement about the I&I reduction activities being linked to some of these other cost points that you've identified. And so if you're replacing or repairing some of the portions of the system that are subject to I&I or inflows, they could also be end-of-life portions of your system, could they not?
That is correct.
So there may be, so is there some overlap among these various categories?
Yes, so there is some overlap among these categories. So this $96.2 million is the high end and represents really realistically a program that exceeds 10 years. It's just at this point, as highlighted by the other recommendation, is more investigation on the performance of the system is needed to really be able to start tackling some of these projects. So you can see here, say this is Crescent Beach, for example. Through the process, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the system is broken up into 7 sub-catchments. And we are able to prioritize projects within those sub-catchments. But to really find the extraneous flows, we need to start breaking up those additional sub-catchments into 20 or 30, even further smaller sub-catchments to find the true sources of I&I. So at this time, we lack the information to identify exactly what projects need to occur to address I&I. So that's why we can't better clarify and eliminate this overlap between the 28.4 and the 16.5 and the $20.2 million components.
And that work, which would create the data, is what you're suggesting we should be allocating an extra 3%?
Yes,
our
is when we
budget.
start allocating that extra 3% per year, can start going towards paying that. I think there's another portion of that budget we could probably add to supplement that. And I believe those studies related to the investigation are also partially covered through the Region CSO program.
Right. Easy to say, except somebody has to pay that 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Dubino, do you have any questions? No? Anyone else? Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. We very much appreciate the information, because this is a big part of trying to maintain and improve our system. So thank you. That then takes us to Report IS 14 2019, which is the Asset Management Policy and Strategy. Could I have a mover for that? Councilor Dubino. Are there any questions or comments with respect to that report? No? Mr. Cook, did you want to say anything, or Mr. Walsh? Either of you want to make any comments about the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add that this is the first report of 2 on our asset management program. This report allows us to meet our requirements under the Act, or under the regulation, for July 1st. Our next report will be coming in. It coincidentally is being developed by GM Blue Plan, who were just in front of us. We have that tracking for a July 8th presentation to council and committee. That will have a lot more detail than what this report is. This is just our overview of how we operate. The report forthcoming will get down to the nitty-gritty. So, I would like to add, similar to the wastewater master plan, it is quite voluminous and interesting. It will be distributed well ahead of time as well.
And I note that there's, what's I think particularly significant is the principles that we utilize as we're dealing with our assets and our maintenance of those assets. Could I ask that there be more pictures in the next report?
Mr. Watt is in the audience right now. I'll relay that message.
More pictures. Great. See, already our discussion is reaping rewards. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a question. I'm sorry for asking it late. On page 21 of this report, it talks about the need to clean out or remove the sediment from the water retention ponds that are now in the new subdivisions. Is that being done regularly?
Mr. Walsh?
Stormwater retention.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is, council will recall they just recently passed a tender approval in February, I believe, for the first of those. We'll be doing 4 over the next 4 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the wastewater master plan report. which we just heard about. Can I have a mover? Councillor McDermott. Any questions or comments? Obviously, a very good presentation. Councillor Noyes?
I understand that we're making the staff recommendation a scenario 5,
Yes.
and I'm just wondering, I know it's in the report, but there's so many different numbers in here. What would the overall increase in the tax burden, or not tax, but the water and waste budget be for per household? I know I read someplace $5 in one place for one thing, but overall, if this is implemented.
It was $4 and change with respect to one aspect of it. Mr. Walsh?
My apologies, Mayor. I don't have that number. The 3% works out to $50,000 a year on the wastewater side. And that would be a $50,000 increase every year, next 10 years.
And that works out to $4.25 per customer per year, according to the report, which is, that's on page 10.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Are there any new business, is there any new business, or are there any inquiries? Councillor Dubineau.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Walsh, I had a constituent in Ward 2 mention to me about the telephone and hydro poles in town that are being replaced right now. And they brought up some concern about how it seems that CMP is replacing the pole, the new pole is there, it's being installed, but the old poles are being left for quite some time. And the resident was concerned just how it looks to have these old poles, you know, staggered, cut around to the top, along with new poles. And I'm just wondering, I don't know if we have any real, you know, power or control over anything like that, but I'm just wondering if Mr. Walsh could explain how that works and perhaps give us some information.
I would think we would have some control because much of that's on the municipal road allowance. Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Pretty well all of the hydro infrastructure is built on municipal road allowances. When new poles are installed, they do get vetted through our engineering department. We look at the infrastructure in the area, whether it's going to interfere with that or any known future plans. With respect to removal, I would expect that CNP does it in a timely manner, but obviously that's not happening. I do have a meeting with them on a couple of issues Wednesday morning. I can add that to the agenda if the councillor would like. Noted.
Anything further, Councillor Dubineau? Sure, go ahead.
No, thank you, Your Worship, and through you again, just the Albany Street stormwater retention facility that's being upgraded right now. Looks like a lot of work is going on, and so far it looks good. I'm just wondering if perhaps Mr. Walsh can just give us an update on when that's expected to be sorted out and complete.
Mr. Walsh?
My apologies. I may have to transfer this over to Mr. Brady. It's one of his employees is responsible right now.
Good.
Passing the buck.
Mr. Brady, very effectively done.
I'm sorry again, what was the message?
It's about the stormwater management pond that's being constructed on Albany Road to take the
Not a problem. My understanding is it's going to be complete in the next 2 to 3 months, but I can confirm that.
Anything further, Councillor Dubineau? Councillor Noyes?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering about the Queen Elizabeth, the new overpass on Bowen Road. There was a fatality there not that long ago, and I know when I take it, I have a hard time seeing, particularly if I'm turning left. Turning right doesn't seem to be such a big issue, but when I'm turning left, it's like I have a Jeep and I'm a little higher. And I have had, and I think all the councillors have also been provided with another concern from a resident about the sight lines. I know I mentioned this to Mr. Welch, and he and I had a brief conversation about if we're looking into this or not.
Well, I know that there was, yesterday there was I think it was yesterday. I know the regional police are looking at this and they're concerned about the visibility coming off of the Queen Elizabeth Highway going eastbound when you hit Bowen Road, aside from the great elevation of the new overpass and the guardrails and the one sign that creates some visibility difficulties. Those have all been passed on. I've raised this with Mr. Walsh as well, and so we know the police are aware of it, and I presume that the ministry is going to be notified of this, Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was in contact with the MTO this morning on this. I was speaking with one of the gentlemen that was involved in the reconstruction of the overpass. He was down looking at it last week and noted before I had spoke to him the same concerns I think we all have here. He has passed those concerns on to their design and planning, I think it is, division. If council would like me to, I can follow up a little more formally with the MTO expressing our concerns.
I think that would be appropriate.
Yes, I'm hoping that that does happen, and I'm sure it will, but it's not just going east, but going west. Going both.
Yeah,
when
they'll
you're-
look at the whole structure.
Yes, because I know that I pull off of going onto Bowen Road and I'm making a left-hand turn towards Stevensville and I can't see. Because I feel like I'm taking have to floor it just to make sure that I clear it just in case something's flying. And I'm just wondering if even on a temporary basis, again, if we ask the region to look at the speed limit on that road, because it is 80 kilometers. So it's not like they're going to be going slower, that even a reduced speed limit may give the person making a left-hand turn a little bit more time when they're turning on this overpass.
Maybe you can make inquiries of the region in the meantime, because that may be a logical temporary measure until such time as there are some design changes, if any, can be done. Okay. Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
Just one further question, and I don't know if Mr. Walsh will have any answer for this. I noticed the last few days, probably because I'm sitting on my front porch more now, with the weather a little better, there's a lot of trucks going down Ott Road, a lot more than usual. And I noticed even in the last, I would say, 3 weeks, the condition of Ott Road is deteriorating considerably. I'm just wondering if is there a reason for the increased truck traffic? Are they not using Bowen Road anymore, or is there anything that's happening that would require all that trucking?
Walsh, are you aware of anything?
No, I'm not. Is this Ott between Garrison and West Main, or below Bowen?
It's between. It's below Bowen. It's between actually Garrison Road and all the way to Fox. So I don't know if anything's happening down there in the country somewhere that's requiring all that. Most of them are going past West Main Street. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'll
Is there any
make a
work going
couple
on
of
at the
phone calls,
castle?
but
Is there any work going on at the castle? Is there stuff being taken out of there? I'd heard that.
Okay, I don't know that, but again, they would be going in unless they're bringing it someplace else in the country. That may be, but the trucks that I'm seeing, I don't know if they're passing it, but because I live further down. But there's something going on, and really in the last 3 weeks, if you would have seen the condition of Ott Road was pretty good from where the railroad tracks are to Bowen Road. It was a pretty good road. Now it's not, and that happened in a matter of 3 weeks.
You'll look into that, to Mr. Walsh? Thank you. Any other inquiries? Business status report, any questions? If none, then I'm going to hand the chair over to Councillor McDermott for Corporate and Community Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have no presentations and delegations this evening. So we'll move to 10.2, to report number CAO 12-2019, the Provincial Review of Regional Government.
So moved.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any comments or questions? Councillor Duvenant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Had a chance to go over the report, and I want to thank Ms. Bradnam for the work she put into this report. It's very detailed. It outlines a lot of benefits that Fort Erie has, particularly our ability should things not go the way we expect. Even our ability to stand alone as a single tier municipality. I thought it was excellent, contained a lot of good information, and I thank her very much for putting it together. I only have one concern, and it's on page 23. At the very end, it's one of the bullet points, and it mentions recommending that only mayors sit on a reformed regional council. And although I don't necessarily have anything against that, I know, I believe his name is Dr. Siegel out of Brock University, did a presentation on some different models for reform of the region. And there were some other things that he had discussed. And without having a sort of a breadth of information in front of me to realize what method would be best, the pros and cons of each, I have some concern with that in there. So I'd actually like to move that just that last bullet point be removed. Other than that, I'm pleased with the presentation. And I think this highlights all the advantages we have in Fort Erie. And I'd like to move that. Yeah.
Okay. Are you moving an amendment? or
Yes.
not? Okay. Any more further questions with regards to that? So can we?
I'm putting that on the floor now.
Okay. So, Councillor Norris.
With the lack of information in regards to how that would change the report, and the essence of the report being the mayor of the town and also the regional rep, I would need more information if we're going to be, is it either or? I don't really know what Councilor Duveneau is suggesting, whether the mayor just be the mayor, or just removing it altogether, not making any recommendation. I'd like to hear other comments before I.
I'll be the only one commenting. So this really arose out of discussions among obviously the mayors, but also some of the feedback from the advisors and the alignment issue of decision making between the local and the regional councils if there's a continuation of the two-tiered system. But I don't mind having this item removed. It doesn't. We speak about a reduction in the number of regional councillors further on in the report, and I don't think it impairs the overall impact of this report one way or the other. That was the rationale for it being in there, and the government, if it's going to make changes, will probably mandate what those changes would be in any event. So I can support the amendment proposed by Councillor Duveneau.
So are we ready to vote on that amendment? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. So now we'll move it on the amendment as amended. All in favor? No? We don't have to do that?
No, I think Councillor Noyes has some questions.
Oh, okay. Councillor, go ahead. Knock yourself out.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I have a few questions, and I did have a chance to go over it with Ms. Bradman, and I do appreciate all the work that she did put into it, and the other people who are also involved with it. My one question is about why are we commenting on the gaming corporation as a standalone corporation? I don't know if it helps our case or hurts our case, considering it's one employee, and that corporation is an employee of the town of Fort Erie, whether that can even exist or not. And for me, it puts another layer to the onion, and I think what the promise is looking for is efficiency, and I think saying that we have the separate corporation doesn't help our case. I think it may actually do the opposite. The other thing is, I know what, and I can't find where it is on here. We talked about the taking over the water treatment plants. And you're talking about there's 2 wastewater treatment plants that are completely self-contained. If I'm not mistaken, Stevensville Douglastown Lagoon is not in Fort Erie.
It's not in Fort Erie.
Yeah, so are we then, Stevensville, Fort Erie, are we not going? what happens in this scenario? Because that's not included. Are we going to be annexed to Niagara Falls then? If I'm just being, I'm being tongue in cheek here because we don't have that it's wrong that we do not have. We are not completely self-contained because the lagoon is in Niagara Falls. So I'm just wondering how we would change that.
Is there,
Well, I'd like the answers to those questions first. I have a
Mr.
few
Cookett?
I'm looking at Ms. Bradnam. She attended the meeting tonight, and I was wondering if she wanted to answer those questions since she authored the report. If not, I would be happy to. Sure, yeah.
And Councillor Noyes also picked out a few typos too that I'll make the changes for, so thank you for that when we talked. We did talk about the gaming, and I did think that it was important to show how different we were because it was under the community of best practices, and to me, that Community Gaming Corporation was a best practice, and the word community was the big piece in there. I think it's more closer to the community, less bureaucratic, but I leave that up to council to decide that. As far as the lagoon, I know the mayor had mentioned too that it is in Niagara Falls, so I'm not quite sure. We're not saying that we are, going to be one Fort Erie separate and not with anybody else at this point. We're just also trying to provide comments about how we can be self-contained for certain things. I don't know with the lagoon if there is a way that we could connect to the water and maybe the sewer treatment plant at Anger. I think Tom Cookett would like to answer that one because I'm not an engineer and I don't pretend to be one.
Okay, so stand by.
Yeah.
Mr. Cookett?
To you, Chair, to the councillor. So the lagoon could be handled in many ways. It does only service Fort Erie, even though it is in Niagara Falls. So we are self-sufficient when it comes to treatment plants, and the lagoon is part of that. We could take over that lagoon. We could have an agreement with Niagara Falls, or that whatever sewage that goes to that lagoon could, and it would be an extreme cost, could go to the Anger Avenue or one of the other, or to Crystal Beach, the other treatment plants. So the point is we are self-sufficient, unlike most other municipalities. And just to speak to the gaming, what we wanted in the report was this is our current setup. This is how we operate today, right or wrong. We do have a gaming corporation.
Any further questions? Go ahead.
Again, I would like, when I'm reading this, I'm talking about the Stevensville Douglastown Lagoon. It kind of makes it sound that the town, if we became a separate entity, that one paragraph would mean, okay, we can control our water and treatment plants, that will be self-contained. I would like some reference to that if we became this, and then we would have to take over the lagoon or build another treatment plant or change the water and wastewater management to the Anger. Now it looks like we can just turn a switch and it all switches over, and that's not the case.
Mayor Redekop and then Mr. Cookett?
Yeah, I wanted to address that. We could make this a very complicated document, and I think the point that the CAO is attempting to make is that it wouldn't make any difference whether the lagoon is in Niagara Falls. They don't use the lagoon whatsoever. So the logical entity, if it came to pass that it was a single tier, and that's the only time this will become an issue, is if we get into a single tier situation. We would have to make some type of agreement with Niagara Falls. I shouldn't think that'd be much of a problem because they're not using it. They wouldn't want to be responsible for the cost of it, so it would be an easy issue. The purpose of this wording, as I read it, is just to simply indicate that there's no one else reliant upon anything that we have in terms of wastewater or water treatment plants. It's not like most of the other municipalities where these lines cross municipal boundaries. Pelham, I think, gets its water probably from the Q. okay, Welland, so that we're not in that situation. We have those within our own boundaries. In terms of, so I don't want to get this too, I don't want to make the wording in here too complicated. If you've got a suggestion as to what you might like to have put in here, that'd be fine. But I don't want to be wordsmithing this thing to death and making it more complicated than it needs to be. So that's kind of my thought on that particular point.
Councillor Dubnow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment on the community gaming aspect. I'm actually glad that that was included in this because through our community gaming corporation, we're able to distribute through the bingo halls in Fort Erie nearly $2 million a year to community organizations. And going forward as part of this process, I think it's very important for us to emphasize that that money is available in our community right now. And should the arrangement change, that may change as well. So I'm very, very happy that that was included, that this is something that our community benefits from, and this is something that we, going forward, have to be very cognizant of and realize that this is something that may not be available if the process changes, and I'm very glad that Ms. Bradnam included that.
Councillor Noyce?
I'm going to first address the water and sewer. I really don't know how to rephrase this, so I will support what's in there just as long as we do realize that the Stevensville Douglastown Lagoon is not, and it is self-contained. I think the fact that the system is not connected to anything other than Fort Erie, I think is the point that we're trying to make. It's called self-contained. I think that's, we could play on words, but I'm not going to get caught up on that. But I just wanted council to realize that it's not all in Fort Erie. We do have the lagoon that services Ward 6. That's not within our boundaries. So as long as that point is understood. The other thing, in regards to the gaming, I don't, I'm not going to make a mountain out of a molehill hill. It would make absolutely no difference in the amount of dollars that the charities would be receiving, whether we had a licensing officer in the town of Fort Erie or we have the corporation we exist in. That has absolutely nothing to do with the dollars that are allocated through bingo. All the gaming corporation does is the allocation, and that's only, again, with council's permission. So it doesn't change. Other municipalities have a licensing officer. It doesn't mean they get less money or more money because of that. So I just want to set the record straight that really doesn't change the amount of money that's available to charities for distribution. The structure does not affect that. And the only other thing is that I understand from Bev talking about that, it's closer to community as best practice. So we had the chair of the committee last week say he doesn't care what the public thinks. So I'll leave it at that.
Your worship.
Chair, I have some sympathy for the last aspect that Councillor Noyes addressed. And let me just roll this back a little bit. The reason I think it's important to be in there is the reasons it was created. And the Community Gaming and Development Corporation was created specifically to take politics out of the allocation of bingo licenses. In many municipalities, it's like a political football, and you weren't around between 1991 and 94 when I was, and believe me, there were politics with respect to it. The other thing the Community Gaming and Development Corporation was responsible for was rationalizing the licenses that were allocated to various groups, because you may recall, Councillor Noyes, because you were here at the time, that we had a large number of bingo licensed organizations, some of which were providing exactly the same service, and so there was money that could have been better spent if the organizations were compelled to work together, and that eventually did occur. This, not unlike the Economic Development and Tourism Corporation, has been in existence for a long time, and there's no reason why periodically some of the policies couldn't be looked at. And I think that goes to the heart of what you were raising last week or the week before. So that's fine. This is a reflection of what we have right now. I think that it shows initiation and a willingness by the town of Fort Erie to do things differently necessarily. And I agree with you. I mean, whether we have this system or another system, it's $1.9 million that would be distributed. However, we're doing it in a different way, and I think that's the whole purpose of this brief, is to provide background to show that Fort Erie is different in many respects and unique in some respects, and we can build the argument for why the recommendations at the very end of the report are meaningful, which basically, to boil it down, continuation of a two-tier governance system in Niagara with a sharing of some responsibilities, maybe realignment of others, definite position of the town of Fort Erie that we do not want to be forced into an amalgamation. And if worse comes to, we'd simply like to continue with that two-tier system, but if worse comes to worse, we can build a case for being a single-tier municipality. And it is sustainable. I've checked with the director of finance. It is a sustainable situation. So that's why I would support all of this.
Councillor Noyes?
I'm not going to talk more about that one, but under one of the parts, and I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Brabnett about under best practices, we talked about volunteers. I think one of the things Fort Erie has going for it is, I can't find the page again, is our volunteer fire department. I think that could be perhaps emphasized a little bit more in the report when we talk about volunteers, because I think it says a lot for our community that we are, I don't know if we're the only volunteer fire department in Niagara, but we definitely have one of the best in the province, and it's based on our volunteers, and I can't find that page. But anyway, it talks about volunteers, and it would be nice to have the volunteer firemen mentioned on that page. I think that would go a long way once on page 11. Just added to the community volunteers that we do have a volunteer fire department. And the other partnership that we have on the same page is one of the partnerships we haven't talked about, and there we didn't mention, is that our partnership with the school board, particularly for the building of the new high school, the theater in the new high school. That was a good partnership. Again, I think somewhat perhaps different from other municipalities. And I'm not going to not support the report, but be interested if those two could be added.
Brandon?
Yeah, I see no problems adding that in, and I'm thinking more about that lagoon piece and wondering if we could just add in there the natural treatment plant lagoon, which services Stevensville, Douglastown, and Black Creek.
Services only Fort Erie.
Services only Fort Erie. Okay. If that's all right. Okay.
Councillor Noyes, are you finished? Okay. Councillor Dubenon?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to touch briefly on what Councillor Noyes and the mayor had mentioned earlier about the funding from bingos in the community. I understand what Councillor Noyes said about the method doesn't matter. That money would still be available. And we could certainly have discussions and debates going forward about what would be the best model. I'm fine doing that. The point I was making was emphasizing that if there ever is a forced amalgamation, God forbid, that money would no longer go to our community the way it does now. And it could be distributed to other municipalities who don't have the volunteers in our community who sit through those bingos that provide those funds to the community organizations we have now. And that's why I think it was important to emphasize that the work that we do to keep that money in our community. Because if we do go down the road of forced amalgamations, we could potentially lose control of that, and that money could be flowing out of our community. And that's why I highlighted how important it was, and I do think it's important we include that. The means is one thing, but the fact that that money stays in our community, I think, is very important, and that's why I had mentioned it.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Actually, I'm in full agreement with Councillor Dubeneau on that, and that is one of my concerns. I did want to keep it in. I just thought we shouldn't mention the separate corporation, but I'm not going to live or die on that. It doesn't really make a huge difference to me. The other thing, I don't know if it's appropriate to put in here, but an example of what amalgamation could do is I'm going to bring it up, the YMCA. I mean, we had our own Fort Erie YMCA, and we then became amalgamated with the larger YMCA of Niagara, and now we're looking at them closing the doors. And that's something I do worry about. I don't know if there's any room in that report. As an example, what happens to a smaller municipality. We will always be the poor second cousins, and we can never argue for the greater good because our population wouldn't support that.
Yeah, I just want to say that I support the notion of putting something on slide 22, which deals with the fire service delivery comparators. Maybe simply to highlight that the loss of the volunteer fire departments for these various municipalities, and there are 7 that have volunteer, would create a tremendous tax burden on the residents of those communities. And maybe that should be stated in words as opposed to hoping someone will look at the graph and come to that conclusion. So at this stage, Mr. Chair, are we at a point where the author of the brief can make the modifications that we've been chatting about, and then we're good to go?
Yes, Your Worship, I think so. So why don't we just put that together in one amendment that we can move our discussion here that we've just had right now, and Deb's taken note, so.
So
Yes, Your
I
Worship.
would move that we add to it's page 25, but I think it's slide 23. Sorry. It's slide 21, reference to the lagoon as had been suggested by Ms. Bradnam. Number 2, that we highlight the significance on slide 22 of the loss of volunteer fire services for municipality and the tax implications that would create for the residents. And I think that's, was there anything else?
And the removal on page 23 of that last line that,
Passed.
oh, okay, okay. And to include about the volunteer firefighters as well.
Yeah, a reference to the importance of the volunteers.
Councillor Noyes?
On page 20, it also has reduced the number of regional politicians. For example, the mayor's only in Abdullah Rowell. That's not on page 23. I'm just wondering if it's somewhere else in the report, but that's just an example.
Well, that's an example. What's been taken out is what was on page, the recommendations. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so are we happy now with everything? Yeah? Because we want to keep it that way. Okay. All in favor?
Okay,
Carry.
thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Burton.
That's an amendment. We have to vote on now on the report
Yes,
as
sir.
amended.
Yeah. So all in favor as the plan amended? Thank you. Carried. Could I have a mover for CAO 12-2019? Thank you, Councillor Dubenow. Are there any comments or questions with regards to CAO 13-2019? Your Worship.
Just want to thank you for your efforts with respect to this, Councilor McDermott. This is, I think, something that will provide a tremendous opportunity for the municipality, and we'll have more, I guess if we get to the bylaw stage, we'll have more to say then.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Noyes?
Imagining that since there isn't any price that's been in the report, no price has been determined yet.
Mr. Cockett?
Through you, Chair, the councillor, that is correct.
Any further questions? All in favor? Carried. Are there any new business inquiries under corporate services? Seeing none, is there anything under business status report? Thank you. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councilor McDermott. And are there any meetings that we need to be aware of? Councilor Dubenow.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We have a Community Healthcare Services Committee meeting this Wednesday May 8th, 5 p.m. here at Town Hall, and I believe it's in Conference Room 1. I think that's all I have.
Anyone else? We do have the, we have Thursday night. Safety and Service Awards Banquet, yes. And that's at the Clarion Hotel to recognize some pretty long-serving employees, which is quite impressive. Counselor Dubenow just mentioned that. Okay, motion to adjourn. Counselor Dubenow, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That gets us then to the special council meeting, which I will now call to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, your worship, with the exceptions of Councilors Zanko, Luberts, and Butler.
Thank you. There are no announcements. There is no addendum to this particular meeting. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, then that takes us through the notice of upcoming public meetings, which I went through before, some property rezonings and a public meeting relative to a drainage matter. Then gets us to consideration of bylaws. And Councillor Noyes, I will go to you for the resolution regarding, this would be the, yeah, with respect to Bay Beach. Now, just hold on a second. Okay, Councillor Noyes.
Moved by myself and second by Councilor Dubenow that bylaw number 59, 2019 to amend fees and charges, bylaw number 4009, as amended Bay Beach parking admission fees is given. Now, I have a third and final reading.
Yeah, it was already
Oh,
on
okay.
the
Given
floor.
third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk and under the corporate seal.
Okay, so that bylaw is now on the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
I think my questions are the same as last time. I see that again under where it has the graph municipal parking lot fees. It has midnight to 9 a.m., $4 per hour, and a flat fee not applicable. To me, that just doesn't make any sense. And when we're charging $15 during the day, and we're charging because they're using the beach, we're going to be charging more at night when the beach is. Anyway, I would think that we probably shouldn't be charging anything other than the flat fee during the day, maybe 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., change the time a little bit to catch those late afternooners. But I don't see us charging on the municipal parking lots or in, and I know, okay, I don't see us charging more after hours than we do during the day. I don't see the.
So I have so my chart says that there's, the only times that there would be a fee would be in the municipal parking lot between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., a flat fee of $15. From 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., $4 an hour, or a flat fee of $15. On the street parking, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., $2 per hour or $10 flat fee. You have something different?
But I'm looking, am I looking at the wrong, I'm looking at Schedule IS-C bylaw. It says municipal parking lot fees,
Yep.
May 1st through September. I have fee per hour, midnight to 9 a.m., $4 per hour, flat fee, not applicable. And then I have from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay, so you're looking at
What am I
the
looking at?
bylaw. You're looking at the bylaw,
So what are we,
which would have to be amended. So you'd have to go to the memo, which is immediately below that on the agenda. And this is what is being suggested, but we would have to amend the schedule in the bylaw.
so tell me what page I'm supposed to be going on because,
So if you go to the bylaw,
oh, memo. Okay, so I
there's a
have to-
memo, second page.
Okay, so we're still charging from 5 PM to 9 PM, $4 per hour? Okay, so in other words, for all-day parking, it's going to be $15. Or are we charging twice? We're charging $15 from 8 AM to 5 PM, then another $15 from 5 PM to 9 PM. Is that what we're charging?
Well, that's what this says. This is still subject to council's input. And I thought that we had a discussion about whether we should charge to park if we're not charging for the use of the beach.
I would think that we shouldn't be charging a per hour fee from 5 PM to 9 PM. That it should be just like 9 PM to midnight, NA. That we only really are charging through the daytime from 8 AM to 5 PM. Now, I noticed that that's changed from the one we had before, where before I think it was 9 to 5. Now we're doing it 8 to 5.
Right.
Right? That's another change, right?
That is.
Okay. Why that change? I don't
Mr. Walsh, what was the rationale for moving that up an hour?
remember talking.
Mr. Mayor, through further discussions with Sean Hutton and the way the parking machines work, we were worried about a person that pulls in at 8:30 a.m. has to stick some coins in the machine and then come out at 9 a.m. and stick another $15 again in the machine again, because if you punch the machine, the former time was 9 a.m. If you punch the machine at 8:59 a.m., you can't buy a flat fee ticket. So the intent essentially is to catch anybody that wants to stay for a significant period of time and use the municipal parking lot. They have to pay a fee of $15. So this catches them all day. If I can make a further suggestion to this, if you want it to match the on-street parking, street parking you pay till 6 p.m., I would suggest amending the flat fee for the municipal lot 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay. Councilor Noyes, you still have the floor.
I'm just trying to digest all that and trying to see the logic of it. And there's so many numbers to look at so many different times. Can we not just kind of keep it easy? That basically during the day there's a $15 flat fee during the day from whatever time, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Or I would prefer 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. myself, but and not charge anything after the 5 p.m.
I understand what Mr. Walsh is saying, so that you don't want to have somebody parking at 8 o'clock, paying $4 to park for an hour, and then have to come back and put money in, put the $15 in. So if you run it from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., you've covered the whole day, and then really, there's no need to charge anything after that, because we're not charging anybody to get on the beach after 5 p.m., 6 p.m. So you could have really only, you look at your chart, you could really only have one time when there's a payment, and that's the $15 flat fee from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m.
Understanding that, and thanks for the explanation, is that I recall there's a few organizations that use the beach. I know that there's a church organization that, service on the beach, and I think there's a yoga thing and some things that happen before 9 o'clock, but not necessarily before 8 o'clock. And how are we going to capture that?
Those services are usually at 9, so they would be caught whether it's 9 or 8.
Okay.
But what do they do now, Mr. Walsh? I guess there's no fee, so they can park.
I know if they park on the street, there is no fee right now. The current parking is enforced. at 9 a.m. So if they wanted to park, in the lot, they would have to pay.
And nobody's gonna pay $15 to park for an hour.
No.
So let's
Not
hear
in
from
40
Councillor Dubino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that's exactly what I was going to go to, because I'm just wondering if this applies to all of the lots in Crystal Beach, including the ones that are closer to the circle. And my concern is if you have people who are parking in kind of the core area of Crystal Beach, not necessarily going there for the beach, but there for business reasons. You know, they're visiting a restaurant over lunch. They're because lunch would be covered by that, or they have business down there. I don't think anyone's going to pay $15 to go there for an hour. But if we had the $4 fee also applied to that time per hour, it would perhaps allow us to capture some of those users who are going there for a limited amount of time. And if someone happens to go down there who's going there for the beach and they only buy 1 hour for $4, that's what parking tickets are for. And then that we would deal with that in that way. So I'm thinking it would be more appropriate to harmonize that line there. Whatever time council decides for the time frame, I'm fine. But I think in addition to the flat $15 fee, that there has to be a per hour rate attached to that as well.
Mr. Walsh, happened to be in Toronto on the weekend, and on the Queensway, behind some of the commercial buildings, I parked, paid $1.50 for half an hour, $3 for an hour. Should we really be charging more than Toronto?
Yes.
I think we had a discussion about this, didn't we? I think I had suggested that $3 made more sense. However, haven't heard from you, Councilor McDermott. I don't know if you wanted to pipe in. Gonna listen still? Okay.
No, to be honest, I kind of feel that they're fair. So I'm on the side of the way it is.
Okay. So, Councilor Dubino, do you want to say anything further?
No, I'm good. I think I got out what the point I was trying to make.
Councilor Noyes?
I'm just looking at the dates that one is from May 1st through September 30th, and the other is Victoria Day weekend through Labor Day. Is there a reason that we're not kind of coordinating that timeline?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is the parking lot is a prime parking area in the eyes of staff, and we feel it merits longer time to capture revenue than on-street parking, and it is also a better facility than on-street parking. It's closer, it's more secure, etc.
And just a question to clarify, if I can, through the mayor, to you, Mr. Walsh. Councilor Dubino brought up about other areas outside, like in Crystal Beach, but not necessarily Bay Beach. I understand this is just for Bay Beach.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. There are no parking fees in the downtown Crystal Beach area.
I still think that the per hour rate of $4 from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. is excessive. I would put it down to $2 myself. And the other thing is not having to do with the fees, but I noticed on the earlier one, it talked about, and the one that we had the last time too, I was wondering why I didn't see many changes because it's the same report. About children, it said that children under 10, there would be no charge for children under 10, and I would hope that would be in brackets if accompanied by an adult. That's not in the report.
Well, that's not part of this. We've already, that ship's already sailed.
Okay.
This is just dealing with the parking. So, if you're thinking you want to make some amendments, Councilor Noyes, this is the opportunity
Okay.
for you to do that.
Then I would amend the $4. I can get it up. The $4 to $2 from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. or a flat fee of $15.
$2 an hour or $15 flat fee
Yeah.
from 8 AM until, the hours again?
Well, it wouldn't make sense that, just like if it's $2 an hour, a flat fee of $15 would be more than $2 an hour, right? Okay, so I would cut both, I would cut it from $2 fee per hour and a flat fee of, I would say $7.50, I guess, just cut it in half. Or, because it would be $8, right? 4 hours times 2 would only be $8.
Okay, so that's what time frame?
From 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., $2 per hour, or a flat fee of, I would say $7. No bargain. And that's just for the parking lot fee, right? But parking on the street, they can park between 6 p.m. and midnight anytime. There's no charge between 6 p.m. and 10 a.m. on the road, on the street, just in the, that's the way I'm reading it, and I'm seeing head shaking, yes. So yes, that would be my amendment, $2 from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and $7 flat fee for that period.
Councillor McDermott, can I hand the chair to you? Because I want to speak to this. I thought I'd made some headway when I met with staff over this, but apparently not. I know that Councillor Lubert's view on this, and I don't necessarily disagree with him, is that when we're not charging for people to use the beach, there's no need for us to charge for parking, because that's who's going to be primarily going to the beach. This is going to create some problems on the streets if we're charging, and I've already had somebody that I've referred to staff, a business person on Erie Road, raise the issue because now their patrons are going to have to pay money to go into their store, and so that's a bit of an issue. $2 on the street, I don't think that that's unreasonable, but I don't know why we would, and I'd like to ask Mr. Walsh, why we are charging for parking when we're not charging for use of the beach.
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The bylaw in front of council more or less reflects the current operating position. We've always charged to park in the parking lot. Previous to this, we haven't charged to enter the beach, even though the town has expended significant sums in the acquisition of the property. As I've stated earlier, town feels this is, or staff feel this is a prime parking area, and fees should be charged.
Your worship?
I'm overwhelmed by the logic. Look, I'm not going to support the amendment, and I'm not going to support the charges unless there's a change to what we charge for. So I guess my question would be, would Councillor Noyes support no fee, no parking fee after 6 p.m.?
Absolutely.
That's it?
I'm not going to support.
I'm rescinding.
I beg your pardon?
Draw, yeah.
I'm withdrawing.
You have a draw on that? Councillor Dubnow?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, just for the record, what I heard earlier. This only applies to the Bay Beach parking lot. It does not apply to other municipal parking lots in Crystal Beach. It is only the Bay Beach lot that we have always charged for use, even when we didn't charge for access to the beach. That's correct? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walsh?
Chair, yes, that's correct.
Is there any further debate?
Okay, so,
Your worship.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move an amendment that there be no fee payable between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. following day. Sorry, 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. And So that's my first amendment. So that would eliminate the $4 and $15. I would move to eliminate that. That's my first amendment. I do, but I think we should deal with them one at a time. Committee. Oh, this is special, this is council meeting, right. Well, I don't know, I don't know if this will pass, and if this doesn't pass, then there's not much sense in going any further.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in light of what Mr. Walsh had said earlier, with regard to how we've always charged for that parking lot, regardless of whether we charge for the beach or not, I'm comfortable continuing to charge access to that parking lot. Even when the beach is free. They'll still have the ability to park on the road for free. There's other lots there. It kind of goes with our past practices. And just to highlight what Mr. Walsh had said about the considerable sums of money that the municipality paid to acquire and upgrade this property, I'm comfortable using that lot to hopefully recover some of those funds. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Anybody else before we vote on the amendment? All in favor? Those opposed? So we have a tie. It's last. Back to you, Your Worship.
So then I would move that we amend the timing so that it's a flat fee from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. in the parking lot. Or actually, rather than do that, I think maybe what we should do is provide for a per hour rate between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. so that if somebody wants to come for 3 hours, they're not having to pay $15.
A seconder? Councilor Noyes? Any comments or questions?
What's the amount? Putting up?
$4. Basically $4 per hour between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. or $15 flat fee.
All in favor? Carried. Anything further on the parking? Councilor Noyes?
I'm going to bring back my withdrawn amendment then, that I'd like to see the parking fees decreased from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. to $2 per hour or $7 for the flat fee.
Seconder? No seconder.
Right.
Anybody else? Put the chair back to you.
We have to vote on the amended amended
Yes,
bylaw.
so we're voting on the amended now. Ready? All in favor? Carried.
Now you can hand the chair back. Thank you, Councillor McDermott. So then that takes us to the next resolution, and Councillor Noyes, you have first and second reading for the tax rate and levy. I've got Councillor Noyes. I think you've got third and final.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Dubanow, the bylaw number 66-2019 to set the 2019 tax rates and to levy taxes for the year 2019 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? That is carried. That bylaw is on the floor for any questions or comments. There are none. Councillor Dubanow, third and final reading, please.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw number 66-2019 to set the 2019 tax rates and to levy taxes for the year 2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Councillor McDermott, you have first and second reading for the confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that bylaw number 67-2019 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting and its special council meeting held on May 6, 2019 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Dubineau, you have the next resolution.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw number 67-2019 is given the third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Dubineau, you have the final resolution.
I do, Your Worship. Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that council adjourns at 8:02 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on May 21st, 2019.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Thank you, folks.